Hello everyone, my name is Mr. McGregor and I teach Modern Studies at Dice Academy in Aberdeen. With all of my classes this week, we've been having discussions about the crisis in Ukraine and Russia's invasion, and there's been some really good points being made, really thoughtful discussions thinking about the consequences and how this is affecting people in Ukraine. But there's also been a lot of fear, a lot of worry, a lot of anxiety about what this could lead to and how it might kind of affect us and kind of what's ahead. And so as someone who teaches modern studies, kind of has some experience discussing these sort of issues, and someone who likes to make a video every now and then, I wanted to try and kind of offer this as a video kind of where I talk about what's going on, at least at this stage, and what the causes are, and kind of why this isn't, as it's set up, going to lead to World War III, or kind of rather than escalating things and getting ahead of ourselves and going down these different paths, why we should maybe turn our focus to kind of the real people of Ukraine who are being affected, and why that should be our focus, and that's what we should be thinking about, rather than getting kind of too caught up in this, and kind of apply some context, hopefully. And so that's the aim of this. Hopefully it's useful, and I'll try and do it kind of fairly quickly as well. So that's the aim of this. So when it comes to the causes, why is this crisis happening? There's a really good video by The Economist. There's lots of good videos out there, but this one in particular I use with my third years, and it goes into a good amount of detail, so I'll leave that in the description that you can follow the link and get there. But one of the reasons goes back to the fall of the Soviet Union, and when it dissolved, Russia became its own independent country, but all the other parts, the countries within the Soviet Union, they became independent, including Ukraine. And so it meant that kind of Russia had lost a lot of its influence and lost some of its land. And over time, those independent countries began to kind of, a number of them kind of became more Western in their approach and started being attracted to things like the European Union and NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. NATO is a defensive pact that all of the countries in this alliance, in this club, in this group, how it works is that if you attack one of the members, it's like you've attacked all of the members. So in that club, there is the UK, there's the USA, there's Canada, there's Germany, there's France, there's 30 countries in total, and that number has grown over time. So Ukraine has, in its constitution, in its laws, has said that at some point it would like to join NATO, and Russia and NATO are very much in opposition. Russia, from their side, sees NATO as getting closer and closer to their borders, and they've seen it over time as being aggression from the West. And so that's part of Russia and President Vladimir Putin's part of his justification for what's going on here. So Ukraine wanting to join NATO and NATO getting closer to Russia's borders, that's one of the causes. And as part of that, Russia, because they used to, in the Soviet Union, Ukraine was part of their country, they want to reclaim it. They want it back in their sphere of influence. They want them to be following Russian ideas rather than ideas of Europe and the European Union and the USA. And so that is kind of set the playing field for where we are. As part of that, back in 2014, with Ukraine becoming more and more Western, it even had revolutions where it overthrew Russian leaders or leaders that Russia had put in charge. As part of that, Russia responded by annexing or taking over part of the south of Ukraine, the region of Crimea, and they basically added that to Russia. They came in and they occupied it, and then they took it over. And at the time, NATO didn't do much to respond. And so kind of there was that in 2014, and it also led to some fighting happening in the east of Ukraine, where kind of pro-Russian rebels were fighting against the Ukrainians for control, and those rebels were supported by Russia. So since 2014, we've had Crimea taken over by Russia from Ukraine, and we've had fighting in the kind of Donbass region in the east of Ukraine. And over time, Vladimir Putin as the president, his anger and his grievances towards this and thinking Ukraine should be ours, he even says that Ukraine and Russia are one nation, his anger at the situation and anger perhaps at the West and anger at the Ukraine becoming more of having an eye towards the West has over the past year or so built up troops on the Ukrainian border, and that sort of escalated the situation and led to kind of what we've seen over the past week, kind of this buildup of troops. There's been lots of efforts at diplomacy by the West, lots of discussions had with Boris Johnson, the UK Prime Minister, and Joe Biden, the President of America, Emmanuel Macron as the President of France, Olaf Scholz as the new Chancellor of Germany. Discussions going on with all of these leaders speaking to Vladimir Putin, but in the end, it didn't amount to any changes. So that leads to what's happening now. What we saw earlier on this week was that Russia and Vladimir Putin, they announced that the eastern part of Ukraine, where there's been this fighting since 2014, that area was independent, that area was no longer part of Ukraine. It was its own separate entity, and that gave Russia and Vladimir Putin the justification to bring some of their troops in, what Putin called a peacekeeping mission, in order to kind of de-escalate and go in and kind of see a kind of a peaceful transfer of power, or kind of that was the justification given for going in. However, over the course of this week, Russia has gone far beyond that, and we've seen what's kind of basically a full-scale invasion into Ukraine. From the east, it's coming directly from Russia, from the south, from Crimea, this annexed part of Ukraine, and from the north through their ally in Belarus. So we've seen Russia come in through multiple areas, and that's led to the conflict, to the explosions, the loss of life on both sides, as Russia has attacked and Ukraine's people have desperately tried to defend their country and defend their independence from this attack that they see as unlawful and being going against this whole idea of protecting Ukraine's sovereignty as an independent nation, just like any other country around the world. It's obviously a very fluid situation developing all the time. Kind of at this point, it's Friday, it's 5:30 on the 25th of February, so things are changing all the time, and obviously the news kind of is doing its best to keep up, but there's lots of stories out there that aren't necessarily true, videos that have been given, kind of they've said that they're happening right now, but actually they happened years ago. So it's important in looking at this to make sure that the information you're looking at, is it being said in multiple places? Is it being said in places that are trustworthy, places that are well regarded? And so there's a lot to make sure that the information you're looking at is correct, and kind of that kind of social media has a lot to do with that, so just be careful where you are looking. When it comes to the consequences, there's a lot to dig into here, but kind of a key focus should be on the people of Ukraine and how they are being affected. They are the main ones who are experiencing the brunt of this conflict, and because it's their home, their land that Russia is looking to occupy and Vladimir Putin has his eyes set on. It's important to know, though, when discussing the consequences, that this is an incident where it's Russia trying to invade Ukraine. That's where the conflict is. NATO have brought in troops in surrounding NATO countries and strengthened their forces there. But Russia's not declared war on NATO. It has not declared war on the UK or on the USA or on any kind of other countries. It's Ukraine where they believe that they are going in and have a specific view in mind. So that is where things are focused on right now. How different countries have responded to Ukraine and kind of the situation there have been mostly through economic sanctions, which are punishments that are put in place against certain countries, typically against their economy, Russian businesses, Russian business people, and the money they've got, freezing their assets so they're not able to kind of move them, stopping Russia's ability to do trade in US dollars and in euros and in British pounds and Japanese yen. It's been a coordinated effort from democracies democracies around the world to this crisis and to Russia. Those may take time to be effective. There's the possibility that Russia having China as an ally, that might help to mitigate some of the sanctions and might give Russia some more money and some kind of a safety net with this, but we still need to see what China's full response will be. Today, they didn't come out to denounce Russia or their actions and said they actually have faith in Russia to deal with this, but through dialogue, so suggesting they are expecting discussion to happen. But in terms of thinking about kind of what is next and kind of what can be done and kind of what the focus should be, really, rather than getting too far away of ourselves and thinking about kind of all the possibilities of nuclear weapons and kind of all these things that could happen in the future, really the focus should be on the people of Ukraine who are seeing their houses destroyed, who are caught up in this, who are innocent going about their daily lives, and those are the people that the focus should be on, and kind of thinking about and talking about this situation, although kind of it might feel kind of we're a bit helpless where we are because we're not able to get involved or anything, or what can we do, or it's the governments that are in charge, and it seems like such a big issue. Even just by talking about it, by being informed about what's going on, by showing empathy and understanding what people are going through, sometimes that's all we can do. We can't do anything bigger than that, and it's just understanding what's going on, making sure that kind of we kind of know the truth of what's happening by going to different sources and making sure that what we're saying and discussing is true, and thinking about how kind of the people that are really at the center of this, which are kind of the government in Ukraine, the people of Ukraine, the soldiers on both sides who kind of whatever their views are, they have orders and they're kind of caught into this. And so kind of that is where the focus should be. It's not necessarily the best thing to say that there isn't a clear solution to this. You could argue that NATO should be sending troops in, but then that would change the dynamic of this. At the moment, it's Russia invading Ukraine. Ukraine is doing what it can to defend itself, and that's the situation that we're in. There's sanctions been put on Russia. They've been denounced by democracies around the world for what they've done. There's been added effects like the men's football Champions League final has been moved away from Russia. Russia are not able to compete in Eurovision and these sort of things, which might seem small scale, but they're important and show kind of the impression that Russia has given to the world. And even within Russia, there isn't necessarily the support for what's going on, with there being thousands of people turning out to protest on Thursday night against what's going on, and as part of that, people being arrested because of it in Moscow and them clamping down on it and not giving people the voice to express their opinion. This is a very complicated issue. Hopefully some of what I've said has been useful, and that this is something that you can kind of at least unpack it a little bit for those who are a bit unsure, for those who are a bit scared and nervous about what's going on, and kind of gives you a starting point, and then we'll have to see how things go from here. I really hope that was helpful. If you've got any questions, put them down in the comments, or you can send a message to this account and I'll get back to you. But hopefully that was useful, and I'll see you later. Take care, everyone.